I was the one they called at midnight, the one who babysat, paid the bills, fixed their messes, but when it was my turn to fall, there was no one left to catch me. Hello, sweetheart. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, have you ever been there for everyone, only to realize no one's there for you? Where are you watching from today? I read every message. Don't miss answering a few questions at the end of the story. Together, we'll analyze this story and try to go through the key points, reflecting on the questions that came up along the way. My name is Eleanor Marie Johnson. I'm 68 years old, widowed for 7 years, mother to 2 grown children, David and Susan, grandmother to 4, and until recently, I thought I was loved, truly loved. But let me tell you something, baby. There's love, and then there's convenience. When Jack died, I stayed strong. I planned the funeral, made the phone calls, held Susan when she collapsed at the service, loaned David the money to fly in with his wife and kids. I remember thinking, this is what family is. We hold each other up when we're broken. I didn't realize I was the glue. And glue doesn't get hugged. Glue just holds things together. The years passed. Susan's divorce, David's layoffs, the grandkids' endless doctor appointments, school events, last-minute babysitting. I was there, every time. Tired? Yes. Lonely? Sometimes. Resentful? Never. Because I told myself, this is what mothers do. Then last winter, I got sick. Not just a cold, a quiet, creeping sickness. One that made my hands tremble, my breath short, my knees unreliable. Doctors said, heart valve deterioration, monitor, rest, watch carefully. I told Susan, "Oh, Mama, that sounds scary, but I'm sure you'll be fine. I'm slammed at work right now, but I'll check in, okay?" I told David, "Mama, you're tough as nails. Hey, can you watch the kids this weekend? We have that trip." Days passed. Weeks. Nobody came. I sat in my small, quiet house, watching the sun move across the carpet, feeling smaller every day. Groceries ran low. The garden grew wild. The stairs looked taller. I waited for the knock at the door. It never came. One night, lying in bed, I whispered into the dark, "Why am I the only one left?" The answer was silence, but something strange happened in that silence. Underneath the grief, underneath the anger, underneath the aching raw loneliness, I felt a spark, a tiny one, a voice I hadn't heard in years, my own, saying, "They left you, but you're still here." The next morning I got up, made myself breakfast, walked to the mirror, looked at the woman staring back. Grey hair, tired eyes, but still standing. I picked up the phone, called Susan, left a message. "Sweetheart, I'm okay. You don't need to come. I love you." I called David, left the same. Then I called the senior center down the street, asked about art classes, gardening groups, volunteering. They said, "Come by today." I smiled, and I went. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But baby, let me tell you, when you've been the backbone your whole life, the day you stand up for yourself is the day you remember you were never just glue. You were the whole damn frame. When you stop waiting for someone to rescue you, you find out you've had the keys in your pocket all along. I walked into the senior center with shaky hands. Not from fear, from disuse. It had been years since I'd done something just for me. Inside, there were tables of people, laughing, knitting, painting, gossiping over puzzle pieces, and cups of lukewarm coffee. A woman with silver curls and bright red glasses waved me over. "You're new," she said. "Come sit." Her name was Marlene. Within 10 minutes, I knew she'd been widowed twice, had 4 kids, none of whom called, and was learning to paint for the first time at 74. "Don't wait for 'em," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "They'll miss you when you're too busy living." Over the next few weeks, I bloomed. I joined the painting class, started volunteering at the community garden. Dirt under my nails, sun on my face, laughter in my lungs. I got a library card. I said yes to coffee invitations, walking groups, movie nights. For the first time in years, my calendar filled up, but not with doctor's appointments, school pickups, or emergency phone calls. With me. And here's the funny thing. The less I called them, the more they noticed. One Saturday, David called. "Hey, Mama, I was just thinking about you. You okay?" "Oh, I'm good, baby. Just heading to Marlene's for a potluck." "Who's Marlene?" I smiled. "Wouldn't you like to know?" Susan texted late one night. "Mama, I miss you. Can we talk?" I wrote back, "Of course, sweetheart. Tomorrow. Tonight's movie night with the girls." The next day when we spoke, she sounded small. I didn't realize how long it's been since we really talked. I smiled. "I know, baby." "Mama, are you mad at me?" I paused, then said softly, "No, honey. I'm just done waiting." They weren't bad people. They were busy, distracted, human. And I had let myself become invisible until I remembered that being needed isn't the same as being loved. The sweetest moment? It came on a rainy Thursday. I was in the garden pulling weeds when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there they were. David with a grocery bag in hand. Susan holding an umbrella and a nervous smile. The grandkids fidgeting, clutching a homemade sign that read, "We love you, Grandma." They stood in the rain. I stood in the mud. And we laughed. Because forgiveness is messy, but it's real. That night, as we shared soup and too many cookies, I told them, "I'll always be here when you need me, but I'm done disappearing when I need me." They thought I was waiting by the phone, but I was out in the world. And baby, it was bigger and brighter than they ever imagined. It's funny what happens when you stop making yourself small. Suddenly people notice. Suddenly they wonder, who is she? When she's not just mom or grandma, or the lady who makes the best peach cobbler. I kept going to the senior center, signed up for a writing workshop. At first I thought, what on earth do I have to write about? But when I sat down with that blank page, the words poured out. Stories of Jack. Stories of raising Susan and David. The beautiful, the hard, the quiet. Stories of myself before I became everyone else's anchor. Marlene read one of my essays and clapped her hands. "Baby," she said, "you've got a voice. Use it." One morning, while I was painting a wild, terrible watercolor of sunflowers, my phone buzzed. "Susan. Mama, can we come by today just to visit? No favors. Promise." That afternoon they came. Susan brought flowers. David brought groceries. The grandkids brought hugs. We sat on the porch. They told me about their lives, the things they never slowed down to share before. I told them about mine. The art class, the garden, the book club, the new walking group that was convinced I could be their captain. At one point, David looked at me, eyes wide. "Mama," he laughed, "you're thriving." I tilted my head. I was always thriving, baby. You just weren't looking. That night, Susan pulled me aside in the kitchen. Her voice was soft. "Mama, I'm sorry." I looked at her. She swallowed. "I didn't mean to leave you alone. I assumed you were okay." I touched her hand. I was, and I wasn't. And now, I'm learning. We both teared up. Marlene once told me, a mother's job isn't to be endless. It's to teach them how to stand. And then remember you have legs, too. The next day, I led the walking group around the lake. I wore my brightest scarf, took the long route, laughed until my stomach hurt. When I came home, there was a message from David. "Proud of you, Mama." I spent my life holding up everyone else. Now, for the first time, I was holding out my hand to women who knew exactly how that felt. It started with Carol. She was a quiet woman at the senior centre, always sitting by the window, knitting something that never quite looked like anything. One afternoon I sat next to her. She glanced over her glasses. "I'm not very good at people," she murmured. I smiled. Honey, neither was I. Until recently. Little by little she opened up. A husband gone too soon. Kids who called on birthdays and holidays. If that. "I used to be someone, you know," she said softly. I reached over. "You still are." Then came Margaret. Fierce, funny, sharp-tongued, but aching inside. Then June, who'd been a nurse like me. Then Gloria, who had never married but called her neighbors' kids her own. We found each other. We built something. We called ourselves the Second Bloom Club. Not because we were starting over, but because we were blooming right where we were planted. We painted, we cooked, we shared stories that had been locked away in old journals and tired hearts, and without planning it, without trying, we became something people noticed. One day the local newspaper called. They'd heard about our little group, a bunch of forgotten women turning a corner of the senior centre into the loudest, brightest, happiest room in the building. They wanted to write a piece. I laughed. Why us? The reporter smiled. Because people your age usually disappear, but you're impossible to ignore. The article came out on a Sunday. Second Bloom, the women reminding us that life after 60 is just getting interesting. There was a picture of us, laughing, arms around each other, paint on our hands. Susan called, breathless. "Mama, you're in the paper," David texted. "Proud of you again." At the next family dinner, my grandkids asked if they could come to the centre sometime. "Can we meet your friends, Grandma?" I blinked, then laughed. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, "you'd better bring your best dance moves." That night, I sat on my porch, wrapped in an old quilt, watching the stars, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the woman left behind. I felt like the woman who was right here, rooted, blooming, ready. They came for me, they stayed for each other, and somewhere in the middle, we became a family no one saw coming. It was Gloria's idea. We were sitting around the craft table, surrounded by half-finished wreaths, half-drunk tea, and fully ridiculous laughter, when she said, "Why don't we do a fundraiser for the centre?" Marlene perked up. Carol mumbled, "Oh, I'm no good at that." I leaned back, smiling. "Well," I said, "I do have some experience organizing a crowd." The other women looked at me. And then we grinned. The plan came together faster than any of us expected. A generations night at the senior centre, potluck dinner, music, dancing, storytelling, and, at the heart of it, an invitation. Bring your family, bring your neighbours, bring anyone who's ever loved an old lady. Word spread. Susan volunteered to help with logistics. David offered to run the grill. My grandkids promised a performance, something called TikTok Grandma Dance Battle, which I decided not to ask too many questions about. Even Aunt Loretta sent a message. "Heard about your little shindig. Count me in. Bring on the feather boas." The night arrived. We transformed the senior centre into a patchwork of folding chairs, paper lanterns, mismatched tablecloths, and homemade casseroles. People came, not just family. Neighbours, former co-workers, old friends who hadn't visited in years, young families curious to see what those wild ladies at the centre were up to. The room was electric. Kids danced with women in their 70s. Men learned to knit. Teenagers sat spellbound as Carol told a story about sneaking onto a train when she was 19. David turned out to be a surprisingly good DJ. Loretta wore sunglasses indoors. At one point, I stood back, watching it all, the laughter, the music, the way the walls between young and old, family and friend, past and present, blurred and fell away. My heart felt so full I had to sit down. Susan came over, kneeling beside me. She squeezed my hand. "Mama," she whispered, "look what you built." I shook my head, smiling. "No, baby," I said softly. "Look what we all built when we stopped waiting for each other and just came together." That night, after the last chair was folded and the last hug given, I sat on the porch alone. Loretta had gone home with half the desserts. Marlene promised to text me pictures. David kissed me on the forehead. Susan stayed behind just to hold my hand for a while. And me? I looked up at the stars and thought I was forgotten. Turns out, I was just waiting to be found. By all the right people. I thought I was done, but life, it's funny, it keeps handing you doors, even when you think you've found your last room. It came on a Wednesday morning. I was in the kitchen, still in my robe, balancing a cup of coffee and a cinnamon roll, when the phone rang. "Hello, this is Eleanor Johnson," I answered, thinking it was probably Susan or the pharmacy, but the voice on the other end wasn't familiar. "Hi, Mrs. Johnson, this is Emma Cole from Channel 7 News. We heard about your Generations Night event, and we'd love to do a feature on you, your story, your group, your journey." I blinked, nearly dropped the cinnamon roll. That afternoon I sat with Marlene, Carol, Gloria, and June at the center, the phone on speaker between us. "We're just a bunch of old ladies having fun," Carol said, half laughing, half terrified. Emma replied gently, "But that's exactly why people need to hear from you." The night before the interview, Susan came over with a new blouse. David called, reminding me to speak up, Mama. Don't let him push you around. Mikey and Chloe rehearsed potential cool grandma poses for me. Even Loretta texted, "Remember, chin up and wear the pearls." The next day, the news crew arrived. They asked questions about the club, about how it started, about why we thought people connected to our little stories, and I told them the truth. People are hungry for connection, for reminders that love doesn't have an age limit, that play isn't something you outgrow, that laughter is one of the last things we get to keep. When the segment aired that evening, something incredible happened. The center's phone rang off the hook. Donations poured in. Letters arrived. Handwritten, emailed, DM'd. From daughters, sons, grandkids, caretakers, seniors. From people saying, "Thank you for reminding me to call my mom. Thank you for showing me aging can be joyful. Thank you for making me laugh when I didn't know I needed it." And then came the big call, a foundation, a national one. They wanted me, to speak at their annual event, to talk about intergenerational connection, aging with joy, and building communities. I sat with Susan at the kitchen table, the invitation letter trembling in my hands. "I don't know, baby," I said softly. "I'm just me." Susan took my hand. "Mama, you're not just anything. You're the reason people remember what matters." That night I sat on the porch again, looked up at the moon, and whispered to the stars, "Jack, darling, looks like we're not done yet." I never wanted a stage, but somehow I'd spent my whole life preparing for one. The night of the event, the city hall was glowing. Lights strung across the ceiling, rows of chairs filled with faces I didn't know. Young, old, smiling, serious. The organizer, Emma, hugged me when I arrived. "You're going to be wonderful, Eleanor." I patted her hand, my heart thudding. Inside, I was thinking, what am I doing here? I'm a retired nurse, a mother, a grandma, not a speaker. But Marlene had sent me off with a wink. Gloria had handed me a tissue, just in case. Carol whispered over the phone, "Remember, we're with you." And Susan had kissed my forehead that afternoon and said, "Go remind them why you're magic." When they called my name, I walked onto the stage. The lights were warm, the microphone waited. And then, the hush. That beautiful, terrifying hush. I took a breath and spoke. My name is Eleanor Johnson. I am 68 years old. I have been a nurse, a wife, a mother, a widow, a grandmother, but for the longest time I thought I was just background. The helper, the fixer, the one they called when things went wrong. And then, one day, I realized something. I was waiting for someone to notice me, waiting for someone to say, "You've done enough, sit down, let us carry you now." But no one came. And that's when I learned, you can't wait for someone to hand you a life. You have to stand up and walk toward it yourself. I saw Susan's face in the crowd, David's, Mikey waving like a little fool, Chloe bouncing in her chair, Loretta dabbing at her eyes with a sequined handkerchief. So I stand here tonight, not because I wanted to be seen, but because I want you to remember, you are allowed to bloom at any age. You are allowed to play, to laugh, to shine. You are allowed to be more than what the world decided for you. And when you do, you don't just change your life, you change every life that touches yours. I ended with, "Thank you for seeing me. Now, go home and see someone you've been missing." The applause was soft at first, then full, rising like a tide. Backstage, Emma hugged me. "You didn't just speak," she whispered. "You set the whole room alight." That night, at home, Susan and David sat with me. At the kitchen table, Mikey and Chloe fell asleep on the couch, arms tangled. Loretta made tea. We didn't talk much, we just, sat. Together, alive. And as I looked around, at my messy, noisy, perfectly imperfect family, I thought, maybe I was never waiting. Maybe I was always just gathering the right people. I thought this was the end of my story. But maybe it's just the part where I finally speak to you. A few days after the event, life settled back into its familiar rhythm. Tea in the morning, the garden in the afternoon, evenings on the porch swing, wrapped in an old quilt, listening to the wind. But something inside me had shifted. I no longer sat there wondering if someone would call. I no longer counted the days between visits or worried about who needed me. Instead, I sat in the quiet and smiled. Because I knew who I was, and more importantly, I knew I had always been enough. One afternoon I sat down with a notebook, not to write a speech, not to make a to-do list, just to write something for you. Yes, you. The one listening, the one watching, the one who stayed with me through this whole messy, funny, painful, beautiful story. Here's what I want you to remember. You are not just the helper. You are not just the fixer. You are not just the background. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to want joy, adventure, and laughter. At 68, at 78, at 88, you are allowed to bloom, right where you are. And if today feels heavy, if you feel forgotten, if you wonder if anyone would notice if you disappeared, hear me now. I would. I see you, and you are not alone. I closed my notebook, wiped my eyes, and went back to the porch. The sun was setting. The kids were coming over for dinner. Loretta had promised to bring a cake, just because. And I was ready for whatever came next. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Thank you for seeing me. Now, go call someone you love. Go remind them. Life doesn't end when you slow down. Sometimes that's when it finally begins. Let's talk about what we just witnessed. Eleanor's story seems simple on the surface. An older woman, left behind by her family, decides to stand up for herself, builds new friendships, reclaims her joy, and becomes an example to others. But if you look closer, this isn't just her story. This is a story about all of us, about love, neglect, forgiveness, and the quiet, burning strength of a heart that refuses to fade away. When everyone assumes you'll be fine, remember the moment Eleanor told her kids about her diagnosis. She was scared, fragile, reaching out. And what did they say? "Oh, Mom, that's scary. But you're tough. You'll be okay." Maybe you've been there. Have you ever told someone, "You'll be fine," just because you didn't know what else to say? Or have you been on the other side, hearing that when what you really wanted was, "Let me come over, let me sit with you"? The truth is, families often aren't cruel, they're just blind. They see the person who has always been the helper, the strong one, the one who carries everything. And they forget, even the strongest need arms to rest in. Why did her kids disappear? Let's be fair here. David and Susan weren't villains. They were busy, distracted, wrapped in their own storms. And Eleanor, she had trained them, without meaning to. Trained them to rely on her. Trained them to assume she'd always be okay. Have you ever been the one who always gives, and suddenly realized no one's been checking on you? Or, honestly, have you ever been so wrapped up in your own world you forgot to check on someone who's always been there for you? This is not about blame, it's about waking up. The moment of awakening. One of the most powerful scenes was when Eleanor sat alone, whispering in the dark, "Why am I the only one left?" And the only answer, silence. But underneath that silence, something stirred. Not anger, not bitterness, a quiet spark. Her own voice saying, "They left you, but you're still here." Have you ever had a moment like that, where you thought you were breaking, but deep inside, something small and fierce said, "No, I am still here"? Think about it. Where did that voice come from? Who or what helped you hear it? New people, new life. The Second Bloom Club was never just about crafts and tea. It was about finding chosen family. And here's a question for you. Do you believe family is only blood? Or is family anyone who chooses to stand beside you? For many elders, neighbors, friends, even strangers become more present than their own relatives. And that's not a tragedy. That's life. That's adaptation. That's resilience. On forgiveness. When Eleanor's kids came back, when they reached out, she had a choice. She could have shut the door. She could have kept the wound open. Instead, she chose softness. Not forgetting, but forgiving. Could you do the same? Would you? Or would you wait for them to earn it? Forgiveness here doesn't mean pretending it never hurt. It means deciding not to drag the pain behind you every step forward. Is aging silence or a voice? When Eleanor took the stage, she spoke words no one expected from an invisible woman. I waited for someone to see me, and then I realized I had to see myself first. Are you seeing yourself? Are you allowing yourself to want things, to be visible, to take up space, to say yes, to say no? For so many older women and men, that is the hardest leap, to stop shrinking, to stop apologizing for being here. What does this say to us, the audience? Let's be honest. This story isn't just about Eleanor. It's about you, about me, about us, about the way we love but forget to show it. We hurt but are afraid to ask for help. We hope someone will notice but stay silent. Who in your life needs to hear from you? Today, not later. Who have you labeled as so strong that you've never thought to check on them? And when was the last time you looked at yourself and said, "I am still here. I am still me, Keha ways"? I want you to carry. This isn't just a feel-good story. It's a challenge. To remember that love is a verb, not a label, not a birthright, not a holiday card. A verb. It's a call, a visit, a cup of tea, a message, a reminder, to others and to yourself. Questions I leave for you. What does being needed mean to you? When was the last time you did something just for your own joy? Who in your world would light up from a simple call, a text, or a knock on their door? And most of all, when was the last time you honored the voice inside you that says, "I am not done yet"? If you feel something after this story, I invite you to comment. Share your experience. Tell us about someone you forgave or someone you're learning to forgive. Tell us how you stood back up or how you're trying. Tell us what second bloom looks like in your life. We are listening. I am listening. Thank you for staying, for hearing Eleanor's story, for making it your own. And remember, we don't fade. We don't vanish. We wait to be seen again, or to see ourselves, maybe for the first time, with love, from our story family to yours.